Hello, gorgeous, and welcome to the Midlife Realignment. I'm your host, Esther Blum, and I'm here to disrupt the narrative on perimenopause and menopause with humor, nutrition, hormones, and fierce self-advocacy. Together, we'll rewrite your story and the rules because there's a light at the end of the vaginal tunnel. Let's go. Today on the Midlife Realignment podcast, we have Jennifer Kirsch, who is a personal trainer and nutrition coach with over 30 years of experience working with women in midlife. She's the creator of Straight Up Strength and Stronger You methods, two proven systems that have helped thousands of women over 40 build lean muscle, improve bone health, and feel strong and confident without extreme diets or endless cardio. You are going to love today's discussion because we unpack everything from weighted vests to creating a success mindset in midlife and not comparing yourself now to where you were in your 20s. So sit back, relax, and enjoy today's show. Jennifer Kirsch, live and in the studio.
Hey!
So Jennifer and I live near each other, half hour away, 20 minutes away from each other.
Something like that, yep.
So we hang in person, lucky us, and also here in the studio today. And I wanted to bring Jen on to all of you because you're so no bullshit, common sense. Make it make sense. It does make sense when it comes from you. So I kind of want to unpack that and your process and all that. So can we just jump in and talk about the fucking weighted vests, okay? And
Can we start with that?
Don't hate anybody who has a weighted vest. No shame here, but let's just talk about the weighted vests.
Yeah, it's so funny that you said that because as I was driving down here, I was thinking about some of the common things trends that have happened over the years of my 30-year career in terms of fitness.
Yeah.
And, every 5 years, it's like something new that everybody must have, And so the weighted vest thing let me just take this. First of all, I'm definitely not criticizing somebody who decides to wear a weighted vest. I look at things through a trainer lens and what I see actually more often than not is social media sort of is having women, they're having a moment, right? It's having women believe you just put the weighted vest on and that should take care of your bone density. There's not a whole, put it this way, the research that around that is not great because what they're testing is the vest plus exercise. But that's not to say that the vest might not have a small amount of benefit. However, what I see is when you're looking at women in their 50s, 60s, and beyond, and this is, again, from a trainer lens, I see a lot of women with some dysfunction in their bodies. So to me, I think, well, if you put a 12, 15-pound vest on that and you go for your walk, it's probably not going to end up so well. And I just know that when women in our age bracket start to deal with lower back pain, shoulders, hips, knees, all of the things, it just takes longer to recover. So my feeling is what can we do to get you be consistent and not injured? And I know that's a roundabout way of saying that, but it's that's really, because I have done some posts about being critical of the weighted vest. I'm let's not just say that the weighted vest is going to take care of all of this. And also, I'm not buying that it's more beneficial. I think there's definitely places where you can use it where it could be helpful, but a 4-mile walk is not one of them.
Well, and I always think, why not just walk when you walk and do weights when you do weights? And then that's kind of a common sense approach, A. And B, yes, women, if they go from nothing to all of a sudden all this weight, and then it becomes really imbalanced, your neck and shoulders hurt, or your hips and lower back hurt, versus having a structurally aligned workout. And, the big trend before the weighted vest was the cold plunge. Well, right? Lo and behold, research shows it's really not great for women. It's not great for women with hypothyroid, which is a lot of women who go into perimenopause and menopause. And it's can we, how did we live before all this stuff happened? Right.
Well, there's always a new product to be sold. Although backing up to the cold plunge, somebody asked me, do you cold plunge? I'm I would rather die than put myself in icy cold water. No, despite what, is trending. I admittedly tend to be a little bit what's the word I'm looking for? Suspect of things that are trending.
Uh-huh.
Because I know I've done this for 30 years. I'm like, I've seen it with my own eyes, what works for people. So sure, we can, new studies come out, new ways of looking at things. So I certainly don't want to say that I'm not open to new ways of doing things, but I don't think I'm not as easy to convince, mainly because of my experience.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, and I will give a shout out to something like an infrared sauna, which we know removes toxins, kills mold, kills Lyme. It's much gentler on the system because you can even regulate how hot or cold you want it. But it's advertised a lot of time as a weight loss tool. I would never tell anyone to use it as a weight loss tool because you're sweating out water. Yeah. And you should be drinking electrolytes when you are in a sauna to prevent that water weight loss, to stay hydrated. So it's like, we really need, why I love you is because you're just a sea of common sense in an ocean that is not so, common sense is not so common. And you kind of just strip away like the hype versus the science. And personal bias is not science. Like, just if it works for you, great. That doesn't mean it's supported by research. Some people, and listen, I have plenty of friends that love the cold plunge. They will stand in a freezing cold shower every morning. They'll sing an entire song while they're in there. And they say, it gives me energy, it gives me mental resilience. It does all that. Great. But most of us are not going to go in a freezing 36 to, what is it, 45 degree bath, 60 degree bath for minutes every day.
No, I know. But back to the point about like, what we know evidence shows. And I've heard you say this too before, and I'm definitely on the same page because like, sure, there's science around a lot of things, but then there's also lived experience with what we've seen in clients. I don't just mean experiment of one myself, but I mean trends I've seen amongst clients over the years. Like, and I think like, no, have I run a scientific experiment? No, but there's some trends I happen to notice. And and I want to bring it back to that of like, you could be a wellness-minded female and find yourself doubting everything that you're doing. If you spend any amount of time now we have social media, but prior to that, what do we have? Women's magazines, right? You go through the grocery store, you see, lose 5 pounds, 8 pounds, whatever in a week. And I think where my mind went off when you were saying before, it's like, isn't it so interesting that it always comes back to weight loss?
Always. Or, I don't want to get too far off topic, but like, on, Apple, right, on my phone, you can choose all these channels to subscribe to. So I must have subscribed early on to InStyle magazine. Every headline is which star is wearing the least amount of clothes, which star went topless on the beach, which star has the naked dressing, like where they're just wearing these very sheer outfits that show everything. I'm like, this is horrendous. It's just the constant objectification of women's bodies. So the last thing you or I want, I think, is for women to be sold things in the pursuit of looking better. We're all vain. Vanity metrics matter. That's what gets us doing it. Let's be honest. I know. But also, like, first do no harm, right? What is safe? What is sustainable? What are we going to be doing 5 years from now, 10 years from now? Right. Do you really want to invest in a cold plunge because you think it's going to help you lose weight versus like, is it going to really actually do anything for you and your...
Yeah. And under the veil of wellness, under the veil of longevity. And I'm like, of course, maintaining a healthy body weight is something that we know is good for your health, period, P. Yeah. But that doesn't necessarily mean you have to be rocking a six-pack in order to do that. So I think, but I do think, I think that so much, especially in this industry, is one of the things I don't love about our industry is that it's still leads with that in a lot of ways. And admittedly, sometimes even when I talk about what I do, when it comes to, you create content for social media, it's like, okay, we have to call the elephant in the room. People are still thinking about this. So I don't want to be disrespectful, but I also don't want to lead with that being the goal, because it's interesting when you do all of the other things, support your muscle mass, support your metabolic health, that your weight will oftentimes fall at a healthy place for you without being extreme about it, without having to buy a cold plunge or a weighted vest or all of the extra things that, quite frankly, when you focus on the big rocks and doing them well enough of the time, it was going to take you so far, right? Instead of chasing after the latest trend.
Or the six pack. So what do you tell women who come to you and are like, Jen, I just want to get a six pack? I mean,
thankfully, I don't get too much of that. No,
okay.
You know what I think? I love what I love about the women that I'm working now. And I will just say, I didn't bring my business online until 5 years ago, right after COVID. And when I started, I think I just looked at it like, well, I don't know how this is going to go, but what I do know, if I'm going to specialize in the over 50 space, because I turned 50 in 2020, I thought, I know what 50-year-olds are capable of, 50, 60, 70 and beyond, because I train them in person. And what I'm seeing online, I'm not loving. And I'm not to like toot my own horn, but I'm like, I think I can do better, or at least I can add value. So that was kind of where I was coming from. And again, not to get too far off topic, but my vision was longevity, function, muscle, health, not aesthetics. Because I had the good fortune of where we work in Connecticut is like, those were my clients. That's what they were interested in. So we spoke to that. We were training for, I want to pick up my grandkids off the floor. I want to go to the playground. I want to ski down a mountain several times in the winter and not have to worry about my knees. I want to hike in the summer. I want to play tennis competitively. So to me, I just tended to attract clients who looked at fitness through the lens of health and longevity for sure, but through function and productivity and bringing value to their lives as opposed to just leading with aesthetics. However, weight loss sometimes worked in conjunction with that, meaning I'm doing all of these things, but yet I still feel like I don't feel great in my clothes. I'd like to look more toned. I'm like, I got you. Like, we could still do that. But I don't like to lead with that because I feel like it's kind of vapid, to be honest with you. Like, I don't want to offend anybody by saying that, but I do get a little jaded after being in this industry for so long when we're always leading with how we look. It goes back to what we say. To what end? We know how this story ends. we know, right? So it's like you can chase after that stuff for a time. And I'm not saying that, when you're 80, you don't want to take pride in how you look. I'm not suggesting that. But I also know, like, it can't be the only thing because it's not sustainable. Like, that doesn't bring us joy.
No, and it doesn't bring motivation, at all. So it really, it is digging deep and finding your why. We talked a lot about this with Rachel Godfrey, who's an amazing guest on the pod too, is just really digging deep and understanding your intrinsic motivations. And vanity is, it's kind of the candy shell, but it's really not the chewy caramel center in any of this. So we really do want to attach to picking up my grandparents or just waking up without joint pain, being flexible, having energy, having good sleep, all of those things.
Yeah.
But so what would you say is the minimum amount of times a woman needs to strength train in order to build muscle, in order to really see a change in her body? What are kind of the variables?
Well, let's start with, and I was just recently talking about this because I'm running a program with newer women to me right now, and this is a question that comes up a lot. And so I think about it through the lens of what's realistic for somebody to actually do, first and foremost. What's their exercise history? Because that's going to tell you a lot about how quickly they're going to feel different. So what I mean by that is, like, when we see results, feel results. Like, people will feel it before they see it. I never would want to tell somebody that, oh yeah, you're going to look like a completely different person in 6 weeks. But I will say, I do have women say to me, they're like, oh, I can definitely notice a change in my arms in 6 weeks. I'm like, okay, so that's a win. What is your result? Yeah. What do results look like to you? So back to your original question, how many times? I mean, ideally, minimum 2 times per week, all your major muscle groups. And by major muscle groups, I mean, your lower body muscles like your quads, hamstrings, and glutes, your chest, your back. Focus on that. Focus on that first. If you have nothing else to focus on that. And you can do that. You can do that probably, if I'm being realistic, if you've got somebody who's writing a plan out for you, probably in 30 minutes. But you're going to be focused. Can't be checking your phone or getting distracted. So I think you can, but I like to personally allow 40 minutes for my sessions because I know I'm working with a more mature clientele, and I am a mature clientele. My workouts are better the longer my warm up is. So movement prep, all of that. But I think for a beginner, 2 times a week, 30 minutes is an awesome place to start. But again, at a certain point, when we haven't talked about this, progressive overload is what builds muscle. And we have to continue to move the needle. And so you might find that 30 minutes twice a week gets you in the door, but it's not enough to continue to build on those results. Mm-hmm. Sorry, I wish it were the case. Now you might maintain, but you might feel that it's not enough to get you where you want to go.
That's right. And so, I circling back to what we said about 5 minutes ago with body change and the six pack and all that, it's also important to recognize that changes, when you see those online transformation, that's a minimum of 1 to 2 years, ladies. That is not, anything else is AI. It just, the body takes time. The midlife body takes even more time. And it's just the consistency, which is why dialing into that why is so important, because you do need motivation even when you're not transforming your results. And so when you talk about progressive overload, Jen, what does that mean? Because a lot of people don't even understand what that means or how to execute it and build it into their program.
Yeah, well, for a complete beginner who has never done any strength training, an example of progressive overload would be body weight exercises. I think this is the message that online gets a little tricky, because we hear you lift heavy, but like heavy is relative. If you are unable to do a push-up even on your knees for 10 reps, doing 10 reps is progressive overload. It's anything beyond what your body is currently adapted to. You have to start there. It takes time, but to your point, like when you were saying before about 1 to 2 years for a transformation, you have to give your joints time to keep up with what you're asking them to do as you begin to overload the muscle. So back when I was doing one-on-one training, if I met a brand new client and they didn't have much of a history with exercise, we would start with like a 15-minute total body weight session. And sometimes that would make them sore. But that's the base. And then we continue to build, right? We want to have confidence in our bodies, moving well. Because what a lot of people don't realize is that strength training is a skill. Right? You don't just inherently know how to do it well, know how to do it safely. So progressive overload really by definition is just increasing the amount of stimulus that your body is receiving in order to gain muscle.
So lifting, pushing, whether it's more reps with your own body weight or adding on more weight. If you were working with 12-pound weights, it's going up to 15.
Yeah, and I'll continue on that. Adding another set. So say you're used to doing, I do 2 sets of 12 to 15 reps. Okay, add another set. You're increasing the volume. Increase the volume, increase the repetition. Add tempo. I'm going to get really trainer geeky for you, but tempo changes, supersets, circuit type training where you're training similar muscle groups. There's so many different ways to do it. I would say infinite combinations, which keeps it interesting if you like to, if you get excited about doing that. But I think, what I noticed, and it's funny, and I caught myself doing this too, because I taught a lot of group fitness. If you're always reaching for the same weights over and over again, that's a sign that you're not doing progressive overload. I'm not saying you're doing nothing, but you're not practicing progressive overload, which is what we need in order to gain muscle. We know, in order, rep rate, my mind goes to what rep ranges. All rep ranges can help you build muscle. It's just a matter of being discerning about how you're training.
Yeah. I'll never forget, one of my early mentors in the field was Charles Poliquin. I don't know.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. OG. Yeah.
OG. Oh my God. He was always, he had a sign on his door that said, "No pissing, no moaning." And
I love that.
He trained hundreds of Olympic athletes, many of which went to gold. And I remember he came up to me at one of the nutrition conferences I was at. And I was like, "Who's that oily bohunk over there?" And I was like, "What?" And he's like, "Hey, Esther, I'm Charles. Here's some books for you." And I read his books and I was like, oh my God, he's so funny and so brilliant. But just reading how he programmed, he had this whole German body composition program and it was volume training. And I worked with one of his coaches and it was 4 to 6 sets to build. And I was like, wow, this takes a really long time. It was an hour and 15 for each workout easily, because he also developed intelligent warm-ups. And, the first set was really without any weights or very light weights. And so what are your thoughts on I'm getting techno geeky here too, but is it when you have, let's say, 4 sets, would you tell someone the first set is the lightest and then you can increase weights each set too? Is that considered progressive overload?
All of it, all of the above. And to your point, yes, that, I put it this way. When I program my warm-ups, it depends on what we're doing that day. But I do think there's something about movement prep where you're working through range of motion of the exercises that you're going to do. So that would be a wonderful way to say, all right, let's just do the first set light. So I do this with my clients. Like I'm coaching them live online. And I'll say something like, hey guys, so we're going to do chest presses today. We're going to do 4 rounds. Our first round, I want you to just take an educated guess what you think you could do 15 to 20 reps with, and we'll start there. That will inform our choices of what we're going to lift as the subsequent sets come. So let's just be hypothetical here. Let's say my first round of chest presses, I pick up a 15-pound dumbbells. I'm like, I can easily get to 20 reps. So that tells me that isn't necessarily a working set for me. That's more a prep set for me. And then, but it gives me information. It gives me data. I work out that way 90% of the time because I also don't know from day to day what my body's going to be able to handle. And I think this is good advice to any woman out there listening. If you get really attached to the actual weight that you're lifting, and I don't want to, contradict what I'm saying about progressive overload, but I do think in terms of being consistent and injury-free, to show up with each workout, having a conversation with yourself. What can I do today, realistically? I didn't sleep well last night. My shoulder's bothering me. So not to get too attached with, well, when I always do these chest presses, I always do 25 pounds. Today might not be that day. Doesn't mean that the workout doesn't have value. It just means that you have to modify it so that you can stay consistent.
Yeah.
But I do think, but back to your original question about like if you're going to do multiple sets, I think there's a lot of utility in taking that first set to just be like, let's kind of be conservative about this.
Yes. And also, I remember too, Charles would be like, that last set, you should only be able to do like 6 to 8 reps. Yeah. Like you should really be moving your muscles to failure. And now spoiler alert for you all, I too have bought one of your programs because I loved it. And it's like, people don't understand what working to failure means. So can you elaborate on what that truly means and why it's actually important to build muscle?
Yeah. So what people actually do, I'll reverse that, because what people don't realize is that the whole process of building muscle requires tension and stimulus on the body. That's what you're doing when you're training. You are applying pressure, which creates trauma to the muscle. When the muscle gets stronger and grows is when it's recovering. And this is where the nutrition piece of it comes in, protein and allowing yourself adequate recovery time. So if you've ever heard, you should allow a day between your strength training workouts, same muscle group, that is true. And that's why. Like if you can hit a muscle group again the next day, you probably didn't work it hard enough the first day. That said, when it comes to working to fatigue, there's some schools of thought, like for an advanced bodybuilder to go to full-blown fatigue, like I can barely move that weight. We know now, and new research is showing that, within 3 reps of that is a good place to be. So what I would always do with my clients is, and I do it online too, especially I can't, my hands aren't on them. I'm like, hey guys, if you're feeling like you're getting close to failure, tell yourself, how many more can I realistically do before I can't push another? Stop within 2 or 3 of that. You're good. Because again, I don't want to, I just know that when we go to full-blown failure, that can be a little bit too much. So if we keep tension on the muscle, that's the key thing. And fatigue is, you know when that's coming if you're listening to your body. Regardless of what the program says, the program could say, do 10 reps, and you're like, ooh, I'm like getting a 6 and I'm starting to peter out. Like, okay, make it 7 and stop.
Yeah, exactly. And also, and this is important too, for those of you who are super new to strength training or are just exhausted and you're trying to show up for yourself, but you're having night sweats or your sleep sucks in the middle of the night, but you're like, I can't even imagine pressing a 15 or 25 pound dumbbell. But that's where, you can really still go to failure if you increase your time under tension. Right. And Charles also taught me, he was like, just slow. So what do you advise for those women who maybe, and this is where I think, I know people don't love Pilates for strength training. I see a lot of strength trainers throw shade, but I'm like, you know what? For a woman who is exhausted and has no gas in the tank, right? You can actually go to failure if you are keeping that time and attention.
I always say this, and I'm glad that you said that, like there's room for all of it. Yeah. There's room for all of it. I think Pilates has that mind-body connection, and I agree, like you can get to those slower reps, but there's also utility in lifting things that are heavy enough to simulate regular everyday activities. Yeah. But to your point, my programs are exclusively for women who are working out at home. And I know that women that are working out at home do not have a whole full suite of dumbbells. The whole thing started that way. I was like, how can I get you to muscle failure with a 15-pound dumbbell? And that was really the motivation and the inspiration behind that program. And I still do that to this day. I led a session this morning and I was like, all right, you guys, we're on this 4th set. If it's not making you tired yet, let's slow it down. And I'll show them the count on how to do that. So it's exactly what you said. It's time and attention. So that is absolutely another way to do it.
Yeah, which I love, because then it's like everyone feels like no matter where they're at, what kind of day they're having, if you're taking your HRV and it's in the gutter, right? That kind of looks at your recovery rate for those of you who don't know. But for those of you who are just like, I am on the struggle bus right now, I cannot drag myself to do weights. Know that you can. Like everything does matter. It make a difference if it's your body weight, if it's lightweight. Eventually you'll get to your heavier weights, and that course corrects. The heavier weights really do course correct a lot of menopausal symptoms too. Yeah. So the goal is to get there.
Yeah, to get, but it takes time to build the confidence for that. I mean, it's interesting. What made me think of that is I had a client that I trained for many years at 8:30 on a Monday morning. So as we're filming this podcast, it's a Monday morning, and every week when I would give her a certain weight, she would go, "Oh, that's heavy," before she'd even pick it up. I'm like, that's you telling yourself. And then she would get it and go, "Oh, it's not that bad." And I saw that happen it became a running joke, but I saw that happen over and over again. I'm like, I think I never would want somebody to rush beyond what their psychology is telling them is safe. But at a certain point, you are going to have to push yourself a little bit.
Yeah, because the mind is always going to quit long before the body does.
100%.
I tell you, I ran the New York City Marathon in 2000, and it was just such a great lesson in mindset and resilience. And people are like, a marathon? I was like, can you run 2 miles? Yes. So if you can run 2, you can run 4. If you can run 4, you can run 8. If you can run 8, you can run 12, 16. And that's how you build, just slowly and consistency over time. And, the beauty also of that warm-up set is you get your form dialed in, right? Because most people injure themselves and hurt their joints because their form isn't right or their alignment isn't right. And we have to slow down to like lock into proper position. Like if you're not aligning right, you will injure yourself or you'll fatigue more quickly without the benefit.
Totally.
Correct?
I mean, you want to be, you want to be efficient with it. And that's exactly how I approach it in terms of telling my clients and myself, like, it's a mindfulness activity, really, at the end of the day. It's like check in with yourself. Doesn't matter what the program says, really, because your body doesn't know whether it's a 25-pound weight or a 20. It just knows that you're feeling tired. And that tiredness could show, I know I'm repeating myself, but that fatigue can show up because you didn't sleep well the night before, or you did something over the weekend, like worked in the yard, and you're like, oh, I feel a little bit off today. It's like, it's okay. This is a journey. This is an evolution, and it keeps going, and your training will have seasons to it. Absolutely. And I think that's one thing that, especially for somebody who has not been consistent with their fitness, may not have enough experience to realize that's part of it. For those of us who have been doing it for a long time, there are seasons to it. But I want to touch on something that you said about, finding your why. I think what it comes down to, you going back to the marathon analogy, is that that's the essence of a growth mindset. Like, what if? Getting curious. What if I can run 2 miles? Why can't I run? That's funny that you say that, because that's exactly how I ran my first marathon. Like, oh, what if? Okay, I did 4. Why can't I do 5? It's the same thing with like teaching aerobics classes with my little 5-pound weights. Like, what if that 5 could become 15, could become 25? And it's that ability to maybe see it as a possibility for yourself, right? That, but it starts in many ways with a desire, right? Because if you don't have the desire, or you tell yourself that you can't, the motivation won't be there to do it. But I do think once you do that and you get on the other side of that, that's when your identity starts to change. and you say, oh, I am the kind of person that is willing to see what's possible.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I don't know, I don't know that that's inherent for everyone.
No, so many times it centers around worthiness.
Mm-hmm.
And for women in particular who have, had some kind of trauma or told they're not good enough or internalized the belief that they
Mm-hmm.
weren't good enough or that they were still a fat girl that somebody called them on the playground in 3rd grade, right? I don't know why. Like, I'm so fascinated by that process of we hear one comment in passing and that's it. We internalize it and believe who we are. And so our inner fat girl who's 8 years old is still telling 55-year-old selves, like, you're still a fat girl. You can't have those results.
Yeah.
You don't deserve it. You're not worthy. And it's like, I fucking am worthy.
Yeah.
Actually, I can have this. And like, shut the fuck up. You can ride in the car, but in the back seat, you're not driving.
I don't want to hear any more from
I don't
you.
want to hear any more from you.
Yeah.
But it's saying, well, yes, I can. Like, who's challenging that belief? Like, who says I can't lift this? Who says I can't be lean and have a lean body? Like, we all have those limiting beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
Mine too, for a long time, it was like, oh, well, that's for other people. That's not for me.
Mm-hmm.
Even with meditation, that's for other people. That's
Mm-hmm.
not for me. No, it actually was for me. Or, getting strong and lean, like, I never even knew I could do that until I tried it.
Yeah.
And, in my 20s especially.
Well, this is exactly why people need coaches, right?
Right.
Because you're in many ways, you can choose to be your own best friend or your own worst enemy or a mix of both depending on the day. And being able to have somebody sort of hold it down for you and buffer you up when those things are going on. And
Mm-hmm.
I've seen that just getting to know women more intimately over the years of my career, that absolutely is at play for so many of them. But I will just also say is that when they get out to the other side of creating show of evidence for themselves that they can do things that are difficult and doing it again and again. It doesn't mean you have to run a marathon. That's not what I'm suggesting. But no. It could be something as small as the story people tell themselves about their inability to be consistent with exercise suddenly changes when they've got 8 weeks, 10 weeks, 12 weeks. Like, maybe I can. And then also, I can have a setback in the middle of this, but that doesn't mean that I'm suddenly need to let it all fall apart.
Right.
I have that one. That's a huge one in the women that I work with now is I see that as a common theme.
Mm-hmm.
Something happened, something came up, I'm like, I get it. Hop back on the horse, sister. Let's go. Like, we don't need to get stuck in the everything that happened and all the reasons why. And I know that like already your brain is probably going, boundaries, people pleasing, all that, but it's true. Like that's part of the whole mix of, I think, why things get challenging for people. But
well, my mind is going to the I can't give up wine. I can't give up booze. I can't. I always hear I can't. No, I'm just going to cut back, but I'm not ready. I'm like, okay, but what has been, is this actually working for you? Are you getting those results? And I find booze is the biggest saboteur of all of this, and it wrecks the results. You just don't see the results when you keep throwing in these roadblocks. And again, this isn't to shame. This is like to give you the tools to set yourself free. And it's, believe me, I have a long, loving, complex relationship with booze in that I love it. I'm fun. I feel fun. I tolerate family a lot better with booze. Okay, I just do. But the reality is, it doesn't agree with me. I don't like it. It wrecks my sleep. I don't like feeling a headache. I don't like feeling nauseous. Even with one drink, like my liver is like, fuck.
Sorry.
off.
Yeah.
No. But for a lot of women, it is their downfall. So can we even more than being inconsistent with their exercise or falling off the horse, I find booze is really a huge wrecker. So can you talk about the mindset or what you see from your perspective?
I think it's interesting because I think it's not unusual for me to work with women who are like, I've got all of the other things. Like I eat healthy, I'm moving a lot, all of those things. And there's that one little piece of, that's still a part of their lives, right? Alcohol. I always say is like, it's the cheap seats, right? It's because it's the quickest way to make yourself feel better. Yeah. It's easy. It's a low barrier. And I say this as somebody who still enjoys alcohol in moderation. However, if the question is, does it keep you from reaching your fitness and health goals? It absolutely can be a barrier for so many reasons. Like you're saying, like it can mess with your sleep. When we know when you're not sleeping well, your body's not recovering as well. It's going to be harder to show up for your workouts. We also know that, in terms of your liver, it's like, it's a science-based thing. Like, well, your liver is really important and it's responsible for a lot of things. And in terms of, a weight loss goal, if your liver is too busy dealing with the alcohol, you're going to have a heck of a time. You're going to have a heck of a time being in a place where your body can do what it needs to do with all of the other wonderful things that you're doing. And so what I always say to people is like, why? And I think where I'm stumbling here is like, because it's this existential question for women, and like, who am I without this crutch that I enjoy so much? And I think, I think that one thing, this is just observational, and I know this is probably the case for me back in my 40s, is that was the quickest way to decompress from a day.
Yeah.
Right. It's social. It calms your brain. It's like, okay, this, like, to me, my morning coffee is the beginning of my day, right? The end was that. But I do think, when you are a high functioning female, and we see this a lot, women in their 40s, their, careers, kids at home, all of that, they're going. They have a hard time slowing down. It's like, that's the one way that now we have this chemical that's helping us slow down. Mm-hmm. That's helping us feel more relaxed, because we don't know how to do it for ourselves. We don't know how to build in that white space in the day that allows the nervous system to calm down. And so it is in many ways fuel on the fire, unfortunately.
It is. And this is, again, not to shame or judge, but it's a process to release it and say, hey, I'm just going to breathe tonight, or I'm just going to breathe every night, or I'll add, one of my favorites is like to add tinctures to water, just calming tinctures with some lemon balm and magnesium and, California poppy. That's another. Oh. That's the base of opium. You can take it in an herbal form. The good kind, yes. So ashwagandha, it's learning to just detox on a social level, right? And say, okay, because we have so much social pressure around drinking too. And then when you don't drink, everyone's like, why aren't you drinking? Well, I still drink. Don't judge me for it. I always I'm sure you do when you go out with friends. They're like, don't look at what I'm eating.
Yeah, I get that a lot, yeah.
Like, if you're not paying me, I'm not looking at what you're eating.
I will just say this is interesting. So my daughter actually works in the beverage industry, believe it or not. And I won't name names, but that she started her career there in marketing. And she said, there's a massive push in her brand for the alcohol-free drinks.
Love that.
Because there's more and more people saying, I think I'm just going to take this out of my life for a while. But I do think the alcohol thing also begs a bigger question in terms of like why we rely on it, right? And I think I've done my own sort of soul searching around this as well. Yeah. And I think I agree with you. Look, I personally am okay with going to a social event and having a club soda with lime. Yeah. I also don't run in a crew that will give me a hard time for that. And I've noticed even more and more being in the wellness industry, more and more people are not drinking.
Yeah.
So that does make it easier. Just
it
like
does.
with it, just like with anything, like, okay, this isn't necessarily, I know people are in environments where they get a lot of social pressure for that, for sure.
Yeah.
Me personally, I'm not, so I don't.
Yeah.
But that probably wasn't always the case.
No, it's definitely more accepted now, for sure. But all this to say, if you are doing all the things and eating healthy and working out, and you're still trying to work out. Now, I do have some clients that have lost weight while drinking, but they are working out literally 2 hours a day, and they are really in a caloric deficit, and then they lose the weight.
Yeah.
But I've also seen them regain the weight when they go back to their old habits.
And I would say too, it's funny that you say that, because I saw that come up a lot in my 40s. Like, the women who were like grinding it out at the gym hours a day.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh yeah, because and then I can do whatever I can do whatever I want. But I'm like, and this is where I think, it's so interesting where women wake up in their 50s and go, what the heck happened? What I used to do isn't working anymore. I'm like, well, what do you mean? You don't want to work out 2 hours a day? 2 hours a day anymore and pound a bottle of wine? Like, no, you have to, your self-care, for your nervous system, for your metabolic health, it matters. And now you're in your 50s and you're perimenopausal, menopausal, you do need to start paying attention. You can't just white knuckle it through and throw more at it. Sometimes that more is really less. And and it was interesting because that's something that I have personally had to sort of have my own evolution with in terms of physical exercise, being a trainer, being a highly, highly active person. Say like, you can't just do all of the things all of the time. At some point, you're going to have to slow your roll and start to prioritize, more recovery. But I just draw the parallel with alcohol. It's like, yeah, alcohol is the thing, as I was saying before, it kind of brings you into that, like, oh, it's very easy to have a glass of wine to calm myself down. Understanding how to draw on other strategies to help you get there is probably one of the most powerful things that you can do. But I think so many of us are wired to do the most. It goes back to the girl on the playground who doesn't feel enough. Who's got to keep proving and striving and doing all of the things. So
yeah, and we live in this hustle culture that is absolutely glorified. And it's like, you're going to be actually burnt out, curled up under your desk if you don't knock this shit off. So you've got to actually the long game. The long game is in it. So, okay, we were talking, you've mentioned a few times now, like recovery, right? And more rest-based. So where does HIIT training fall into the mix? Because I get so many questions from my clients, and I look at their Dutch tests and I'm like, well, your cortisol is actually circling the drain, so why don't for some people I have them pull back and do more just walking.
I know.
But where can HIIT fit into all this, and how do you know when to use it and when to pull back? What's your approach to all that?
I think, well, of course, my mind goes in like 8 different places because I think there's definitely a certain type of female. I think I probably was one of them for a while, which was like, you could tell me, hey, maybe not so much of that boot camp HIIT stuff because your nervous system is taxed and your cortisol is circling the drain, but you don't want to hear it because there's an addictive quality to that for sure. I've lived it myself. How do you know short of testing, like slowing down and realizing like, where is my nervous system actually? So one of the things, and I'll just lead with this, if you are a woman over 45 and you're dealing with a lot of inflammation and you feel like I'm puffy, I don't feel great, but I'm still doing a lot of exercise, I think that's a really clear sign you need to slow your roll. That short of testing. But does HIIT have a place? Absolutely. But it's one of those things that, we used to teach. Well, to be fair, like when they study HIIT training, true HIIT training, most women are not doing to that level. You have to have a very, very strong base of fitness to do that at the level that it's being studied. However, if we're talking about it, let me bring it back to the progressive overload. If it's an intense effort beyond what your body is used to, that's intense for you. But I think what a lot of people did, and this is no diss at the chains of F45 and Orange Theory, I think that's a wonderful gateway to get people in, and it's wonderful for a lot of people. But there are women that get very enamored with that, and they just do too much of it. And so that's where we see the inflammation and stuff. It's just you're just stoking the fire over and over. So I think there's a time and a place, just not an everyday thing. And certainly not 45 minutes of pedal to the metal. I used to teach spin classes. I'm sure you remember what that's like. It's the more intense, the better. And I saw, I experienced it. I lived it. I was teaching 4 or 5 spin classes a week, doing boot camps, doing the most, just doing too much for my body. At a certain point where you're like, ooh, yeah. You think, oh, I should be lean AF, but not the case.
Not the case.
No. And I think people don't realize that's, your body starts to, your metabolic rate starts to regulate in response to the stress that you're putting it under. So how much HIIT? I can't really answer that specifically or definitively because it's going to depend on the person. Do I include it now? Yes, but like once or twice a week. Really, in the middle of a spin ride, at the end of a weight training workout, small doses. Because you still need to be able to train your power. we're hearing a lot about like jump training and things like that. I look at it through the lens of I want my clients to not just build muscle, but be able to react quickly. And the only way to do that is to train it. So to me, if you want to call it HIIT, I'm like, yeah, there's agility, there's bounding, jumping. Like that would fall into the HIIT category for a person who is not currently doing that. Absolutely.
But can you also train for agility with balance or with drills like, the ladders or coordination?
For sure. Shout out to my client, Melinda, who is 81 years old and plays competitive tennis.
Aww.
Now, I started working with Melinda probably when she was 74. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Most 81-year-olds don't move like this. The reason that she moves like this and can still continue to play competitive tennis without injury is because of things I'm asking her to do. Agility, jumping on one foot, side to side, changing direction quickly. Yeah. Is she doing burpees? No. She doesn't need to.
Who is doing burpees these days? No. Come on.
Well, intelligent burpees. So I was like, I call it the burpee breakdown. I'm like, if you're going to do it right. Do it the way it's meant to be done, not just to throw your body on the ground and come back up. Because to be fair, I go, I'm like, if you were to slip and fall and break yourself with your hands, you should be able to pick yourself up at least once.
That's true. I didn't think about that.
Yeah, which gets me thinking too about that. Like, I just last week I heard 2 stories of people talking about their mom or their aunt who, she fell and she had to crawl to pull herself up on the kitchen counter. These are people in their 80s. My friends, that does not have to be your fate. You could be like my client Melinda, who's still playing tennis and traveling. She and her husband is also a client. He's 83.
And lifting your suitcase from the floor of the plane to the overhead
and walking
cabin.
20,000 steps a day in their European vacation. Like, you guys, this is possible, but you have to, the foundation is now, truly.
Truly, yes. I remember being in, my husband and I were hiking in the Pyrenees, and there would be people in their 70s just with their walking sticks, lean, fit, carrying heavy packs, walking along. And that's also agility, is like hiking on uneven terrain. That's another form of agility. You and I always talk about that. And there was just, as we record this, there was an 80-year-old that just finished the Ironman in 16 hours.
Yes.
I was like, that's better than a lot of people who are younger and probably more able-bodied.
I know.
So it is possible. And it's what I can't stand is when people our age say, oh, I'm old. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? No.
We were joking earlier before we came on here about our glasses, right?
Right.
My eyes are aging. Yes.
Yeah, of course.
But I think, but this goes back to how I look at seasons of fitness. Like it can change. And in fact, last week I was out west. I was out in Lake Tahoe visiting my son. We went on a hike and I thought about that. I'm like, hiking is such an amazing exercise. I think it's not given its due, but it makes sense why a lot of older people do it, because it's like, it's a slower pace, but make no mistake, you want to be fit. You want to be fit. You want your balance, your agility, your physical, your heart rate to be, or your cardiovascular health to be there. It's like literally checks all the boxes. Yeah. And even if you're like, when you have the type of hiking where you have to kind of crawl on rocks and stuff, I'm like, this is like as good as it gets, guys. Yeah. This is like being a kid again, really, when you think about it. Because this is what we were doing as children. If you had the I mean, you grew up in the city, so I don't know how much.
No, I grew up in Fairfield, Connecticut.
Oh, you did? I thought
I did.
Okay.
Yeah. We live in a small town called Weston. So there's a lot of hiking. Now, it's interesting because since I got Lyme disease, now I won't do the old trails and the old hikes I used to do. Yeah. My husband's always like, come on. I'm like, nope, won't do that, but I will do this. So I just have revamped where I hike and how carefully. But it is hands down one of my favorites. And I mean, again, when we were in the Pyrenees, it was like aggressive switchbacks straight uphill for an hour straight, really, really steep. And, it was, it's incredible. And I was, my feet were more tired than anything else, but it's fantastic. And
for sure.
We have a trip planned to the Azores in Portugal. And same thing, doing these 8-hour hikes. And it's so funny too, when the guides describe it, they're like, oh, it's pretty strenuous. And then you get there and you're like, no, it's not actually. They're like, this isn't going to take 8 hours. This will take 6 or 7. But yeah, it's amazing how few people our age are in shape. And I'm like, what is happening? Why? Like, why can't everyone be in better shape? And,
I know.
And make a little time every day. Not a lot. You don't take hours, but just do something every day. The body responds so beautifully to fitness.
And I think this is what we open the conversation with this. I think, I've come from, in terms of, I think the type of clients and women that I attract into my membership is that it goes beyond just how we're looking. Sure, that's a lovely part of it, but it's what we're able to do.
Yeah.
And there's something very gratifying about, to your point, like, oh, it says this hike is going to take us 3 hours. We got this, and to be able to have the capacity to do that is such a gift because I don't know about you, but like, I want I'm going to be 55 in a couple of weeks. I'm like, I want my next 30 years to be full of adventure and fun things, not a story I'm telling myself about all of the things that I am not able to do because I'm over 55.
Right.
And I do think we're in a time now that 55 looks different. I mean, when you and I were growing up, 55 was old. Yeah. We're like, what?
If you
Who are they talking to?
Oh my God. If you go back to the old shows like All in the Family or
Golden Girls?
Jeffersons, Golden Girls, right? Everyone is younger than we were then. And we're like, we're doing it. We're doing it better. We're doing it so much better. It's fascinating too. As we record this, I am just over 3 weeks post-hysterectomy. And it's like and the surgeon, I said, when can I get back to activity? That was the first question I asked him. The second, of course, was when can I have sex again? But I was like, and so he was like, the more active you are, the better you'll recover. So of course, within a week or two, I was like back up to 6 miles a day. And then I was like, oh, I think I need to cut back a little. I'm still a little sore.
My mind tells me I'm 30, but
I know, but I know that because I pre-gamed with putting on muscle this summer and increasing my mileage, I made sure usually I'll hit 4 to 6 miles a day. I made sure I hit 6 to 7.5 miles a day. So it was like the recovery, and my friends were looking at me and they were like, how do I get your experience? But neither of them work out.
Yeah, you got to build to it.
And I was like, well, there's your answer. Is yes, I took some anti-inflammatory supplements. Yes, my diet's healthy. I'm not perfect. I don't always hit my protein goals every day or my fiber goals, but overall I'm pretty good. Yeah. But like, there was nothing I did that was dramatic. The most dramatic thing I did was bump up my activity pre-op. Yeah. And that, I think, makes the biggest difference in your recoveries. The more muscle mass you have, the greater your longevity, the greater your insulin reception, the greater, the fewer menopausal side effects you experience, the greater your energy and sleep. And also, that this is why you pre-game is so, God forbid, you do have to have a surgery or your body is under stress or you go through, an illness, like you can recover better than if you didn't have those pieces in place. And that's, to me, that's my why is like, is watching my parents age poorly, very poorly. They were 10 to 20 years biologically ahead of where their biological age was. Like they were not healthy. They had what's called polypharmacy, where you're on 8 to 10 different medications and, you're falling all the time or your spine's degenerating or, just so many health issues that, knock wood, I don't have. And I'm like, I never want to age like my parents did. I want to age like my grandfather did, who lived to be 105 and a half and did surgery till he was 80 and practiced medicine till he was 95 and a half and then painted full-time the last 10 years of his life. And when he had asystole, he was not on any medications. Occasionally, he would take a Lasix if he had a little fluid around his heart. And if he had asystole, which is some irregular heartbeats, he would go down to his exercise bike and he would ride it until his heart rate kind of caught up with the irregular beats and it would go away.
He would do his own little reset.
He would do his own little reset, and he made sure to walk up and down the steps in his house every single day. And it was like, and he rested, he took naps, and he painted, and he managed his stress very well. And he ate. They had a 25-acre farm in Ridgefield, so there was so much farm fresh produce that they ate. But I think all those things make such a difference and in how you age.
I absolutely agree. And I think, I think we are living in a time where it's just more commonplace. It's not, even when I started my career, people were like, like they would look at people that went to the gym as like a, oh, this is just an incredibly vain person. Now, admittedly, I got started when I was 19. So yes, there was absolutely some of it. But I also know that it changed my definition of what I wanted for myself as an aging person. And it continues to do that. So to your point, I've seen with clients who over the years and talked to people who fall off track due to some life circumstance, whether it's an illness or a surgery or an injury, and they start telling themselves that, oh, and I don't want to say I don't have patience for that. I have empathy for that, but I've also lived that myself. I've had both of my hips replaced. I've torn both of my ACLs, 3 of those surgeries since I was 46. So I feel very blessed to have done the work of the foundation of the muscle and the mobility and the flexibility and being able to get up and down off the floor with a leg that's in a brace or being able to just live my life. I'm like, it's not perfect, but to your point, like pre-surgery, you're like, I went in, I pre-gamed. I'm like, yeah, you have to fortify your body because you have no idea what's coming down the pike for you. You don't. And whether it's a physical surgery or heaven forbid, something like cancer, right? That you need to get treatment for, the more muscle on your body, the better you're going to weather that. Yeah. And so I just think like, if nothing else, it's just do it because it's like brushing your teeth. If you want to keep your teeth, you got to have good oral hygiene. If you want to be as healthy as you can for as long as you can, you've got to maintain your muscle.
Yeah, and I remember watching you recover from your most recent ACL surgery, and I was with you when you tore it. You and I
had coffee, and I was like, I'm limping.
Yeah. And again, but your mindset was unstoppable, and you were so adaptive. Like when you were doing your exercises post-op with your leg in a brace, and you're like, my leg is clearly in a brace, so here's how I'm going to adapt. That's it. We don't stop. And so when you have these roadblocks, it's like instead of saying, I can't do this, you could be like, how else can I make this happen? What else can I do? Wow, let me play with this. Wow, this is really great to work upper body or what, how did you adapt your exercises?
Well, I also, and I also have to run my sessions for my clients too. And it was like, definitely touches on your insecurity. Like, holy cow. Like I'm teaching online and I've got to demo these exercises. Unfortunately, my clients are like, they're like, it's fine. It's fine.
Even better that you're doing it.
But it's back to what we were saying before. It's about the marathon analogy. Like it's a growth mindset. You look at what's possible rather than focusing on what's not. Right. And that's something I don't know when that started for me. I think I've always had an element of that. And it's a skill I've refined over the years. And I would encourage anybody who falls into the trap of like, oh, well, I do think it kind of lends itself into that perfectionist mindset of like, okay, if it can't look exactly like I think it's supposed to look, then I'm just gonna bail on it. So how do I work around that? It's like I focus on what I can do, not on what I can't. And even working over the years, especially when I was doing more one-on-one client training, I'm thinking back to a client who had an ankle replacement, another one that had a knee replacement, others with like a hip labrum tear. Like this is just in the past few years. Like they're like, I won't be able to drive for a couple of weeks, but I'm coming in as soon as I can get a ride there. I'm like, let's do it. Because it's going to keep you mentally healthy too. Yeah. Right. We might have to work around this. You might be going to PT for whatever body issues going on, but we can work around what your limitations are and you'll feel like you're still staying on track. As people say, like, I'm off track. I'm like, don't get off track. Life is the track. We're just going to take a little detour here, but we don't have to completely jump off.
Right. And this is so important because so many of us we're not only recovering people pleasers, but we're recovering perfectionists. So again, midlife hormonal fuckery and the absolute whack-a-mole and the roller coaster that goes on, you can feel less than if you're like, I used to be unstoppable. I used to always go to the gym. I used to always do this and now I'm off kilter. And then people have to relearn what's possible. So
Yeah.
how do you coach, again, those women who are like so self-driven, so type A, very high positions in corporate jobs? Like, how do you really coach them to soften that inner critic?
That's definitely a tough one, but I will say this. I think women have a knack of comparing themselves to a former version of themselves, right? When they thought they were at their best. And that's always the the barometer to which we're measuring everything and trying to top it. And this could be everything from, we're talking about bodies, when I was at my leanest, or when I was making the most money, or when I was feeling my most confident, whatever it is. And it's like, that's fine because you got the dopamine hit of whatever that was. But you have to realize that decades of your life are going to continue to pass, and you are going to lose the ability to do some things, and having some grace enough to accept that that's part of it. Yeah. I think, and of course I don't get through to everybody. I have one client in mind that I was thinking of that I remember this really clearly. She'd been active her entire life, and in her 40s, she, did the keto diet. She's like, I finally lost that 8 pounds. I'm like, yes, but was it sustainable? Because just because you got there doesn't mean that it's going to be the best thing for you to continue to knock on that door over and over again, as if that is the gold standard of what where your body should be. And so, yes, that was an example of weight, but I think, I could say for myself, okay, yeah, back in my 30s, late 30s, I did a 3:40 marathon. That's freaking fast.
That's incredible.
Right? There's no way in hell I could do that. Nor would I try, by the way. I'm like, I am the bionic woman. I am titanium. I don't want to mess with that. I don't want to have them redone. So for me, like, I love the hiking. I do a lot of strength training. Yes, I still jump around, but I don't feel the need to go out and pound the pavement anymore. Yeah. All this to say, like, I think it's just, it's being okay with redefining what the next decade looks like for you. And to me, I take it in like 5-year increments, like in that, okay, whether I'm definitely have a vision kind of person. I think that's where we talk about mindset and, manifestation and all that. There's a lot of science behind this. This is not incredibly woo-woo, but it's something that I have personally practiced my entire adult life in some shape or form. But back to what I talk to clients about is like, you have to be able to envision a version of yourself.
Yeah.
And sometimes that version is not going to look like where you were when you were running a 3:40 marathon. I celebrate that. It's amazing. Celebrate whatever your thing, whatever your high point was, but understand that we are going to continue to evolve as we should. As we should.
Yeah. I love that. Okay, so where can people find you and purchase your awesome programs that can be done at home with only dumbbells? You don't need a squat rack. You don't need a Smith machine. You don't need any of those things.
I haven't been near any of those things in a while, and I keep thinking to myself, I'm going to go back. So Jennifer Kirsch Fitness on all the platforms. I'm mostly on Instagram. You can DM me anytime. And my website is also Jennifer Kirsch Fitness. And so my signature program is Straight Up Strength, which is an 8-week program, and it's dumbbell-based. We use minimal equipment for this program. All the workouts are between 30 and 40 minutes. They are geared toward, I would say, confident beginners up through intermediate and advanced exercisers. I try to make it work for all of those levels. We run that program, run that program 2 times per year. I have a co-coach that helps me. And we meet once a week during the 8 weeks, and tons of support. So if somebody is new to strength training and wants that support of not just a coach, seasoned coach, but a community, it's a great, great experience. So we love it.
And many of my clients already take your classes because I promote you constantly. I'm like, go see Jen. So, we will put all of this in the show notes, of course. And thanks for being here.
Thank you. Super fun.